Hey there, Mike again on my DIY channel. Appreciate you stopping by. Today, I'm going to do a quick video on an auxiliary or a reserve air tank for your air compressor. And at the bottom in the description, I will link another video that I'll be doing shortly after this for understanding PSI pressure and everything, because a lot of people aren't getting the pressure that they should, and they complain about tools. I've seen a lot of times you buy an impact wrench or a die grinder or something, I see reviews where people complain that it's not as powerful as it's advertised. A lot of that's because you're not setting it up right. But anyway, today is on the auxiliary air tank, and I'm going to just go over real briefly why you would want one, who would need one, who might not need one. And then I'm going to give you a recommendation on the best type of auxiliary air tank and the best way to set it up. Now, best is a weird word because it's basically people's opinions, and we know what that means. Everyone's got one, just like their ass, and they all stink. But this is my opinion, and hope you'll go with it. And like I said, if you want to subscribe, that's great. It's not a big deal, but check out my other videos on tools, on welding, on plasma cutters, working on cars, whatever. I try to do DIYs on a lot of things. So let's get to this. I'll do this for a couple minutes explanations, and then I'll show you the actual setup. So why would you want an auxiliary air tank? Mainly because you have two parts of air tanks, or air. You have PSI, the pounds per square inch, the pressure, and then you have the CFM, the cubic feet per minute of the volume, how much air is actually coming through. And all tools, have certain settings. Big ones that use a lot of air and a lot of pressure are like impact wrenches, and they can suck up that air really quick. So by having an auxiliary tank, you can make your job last longer, and you won't have to set the PSI as high on the your compressor, on the regulator going out, because we all know you have static pressure, like you set it, say 100, but working pressure, when you actually pull the trigger or start the tool, that pressure goes down. That's the pressure you need. That's your working pressure. So when a tool says it needs 90 PSI, you can't really set the regulator for 90, because when you pull the trigger, it's going to drop to like 80 or 70. You need to set it for like 110 or so. That's into the next video. But anyway, by having an auxiliary tank, you have more volume of air available. So you won't have to set that PSI as much. That means the compressor is going to last longer, as far as before it has to start refilling up again. And so if you've got impact wrenches, air wrenches, die grinders, plasma cutters, things like that, anything that uses a lot of air, an auxiliary tank can be very handy. Obviously, if you've got a 30-gallon or less air compressor, this is applicable. If you've got a 60 or an 80-gallon air compressor, you probably don't need to have an auxiliary tank. You have to be very careful. You don't want to get an auxiliary tank that's too big. For instance, if you have a 20-gallon air compressor like I do, and you get another 20-gallon tank as an auxiliary, that means that compressor, the motor and the actual compressor, from starting from an empty tank on both, it's going to take twice as long to fill it up. That's a lot more stress. That compressor, that motor wasn't really designed. It was designed for a certain run time. Like it runs for 6 or 7 minutes to fill up. And then as the pressure goes down, it kicks back in and takes another 1.5, 2 minutes to top off again. It wasn't meant to be running, say, for 13 straight minutes trying to fill these up. So you have to be really careful. So what size do I recommend? Usually about a 5-gallon. If you've got a 20-gallon or less air compressor, 5 gallons is enough. It's going to give you about 25%. If you've got a 10-gallon compressor and you throw 5 on there, that's 50% more volume. That means your job you'll be able to last a lot longer. And there's some things that doesn't really matter if you take a lot of breaks. But if you are doing an impact wrench, say doing lug nuts, with a regular tank, you get, say, 2 or 3 lug nuts off, and the pressure's too low now because you're using up all that air to try to get that 4th and 5th one. Now you got to wait for the compressor to kick back in and get high enough pressure again. Where the auxiliary, you'll be able to, with both of them on there, you get all 5 of them off. There's some things like plasma cutting. I can cut for, say, a minute and a half or so before my compressor kicks in with the auxiliary tank. I can go 2 to 3 minutes, and you can get a lot of cutting done in that amount of time, then take a quick break. So that's why I also recommend the 5 gallon. It's not too big, it's not gonna stress out your compressor and have to fill it up all the time. Plus it's small enough that you can use it as a auxiliary for, say, filling up your car tires. The way I'm gonna show you to set it up, you'll be able to disconnect and use it with a, say, air gun on it or something that you can blow off the deck, blow off dirt and stuff on your workbench, blow off on your front porch, take it out to the car, maybe top off some tires. 5 gallons is a really good size. You could go with 10, it starts to get a little heavier. So what do I think is the best tank to buy for an auxiliary? None of the ones you can buy in a store. I'm gonna tell you right now. The best is a used 5 gallon, or they call sometimes 20-pound propane tank. Especially if you find one of the older ones that have the 5 points on the valve knob. Those by law can't even be refilled. So hey, use it for air. I found a lot of places you can get these for free. Go to a propane place that, you know, where people turn some in. I've had them give them away. The most expensive I've ever found them was $5 or $10, and that was at a recycling place where I go to get sheet metal and stuff for welding and plasma cutting. So for $5 or $10, you get one, versus a 5 gallon at Lowe's or something. It's going to cost you anywhere from $50 to $125 for a 5 gallon. And all of those that you buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, even over at Harbor Freight or whatever, you'll see right on them, they're written max pressure about 125 PSI. Well, that can be a little bit low if you have some big jobs that you want some higher pressure. But you get a propane tank, those things are rugged. They were designed for flammable gas. They can easily do over 250 PSI. These things, they're indestructible. And all you have to do is, take that old tank, get the right pipe wrench, get that old valve out, spend about $5 to $10 over at Lowe's or Home Depot, whatever. Get yourself 2 or 3 connectors, and boom, you've got yourself an air tank. And obviously, when you get that old valve off that propane tank, just take the propane tank out into your yard, driveway, whatever. Take a garden hose with some water, put it in that inside that tank. Let it overflow with water. That'll push out any of the old propane fumes. Fumes are very dangerous, but also any grit or anything that might also be in there. But then just flip it upside down and let it drain out and let it dry, and you're good to go. And the best way to install it is really, you'll see a lot of people with videos here, and they have you taking out your safety pressure valve on your compressor and putting in a T connector, putting the safety valve back in, and then on that T coming off to your new spare tank. I'm sorry, that's about the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I've looked into it. I mean, there's absolutely no logic to this. The only time that would be logical would be if you had a permanently mounted large air compressor in your shop, 60, 80 gallons, and you were adding a second tank, which personally I don't know why you'd be adding a second tank to a 60 or an 80 gallon, but where it's going to be permanent, then maybe I could see that. But you got to remember, that safety pressure valve is there for only one reason. Let's say your compressor's set for, it's 135 PSI or 125 PSI. We'll use that. When it hits 125, the switch automatically has a sensor. It shuts off the compressor, right? Well, that safety valve is there, so in case that switch goes bad, and all of a sudden at 125 max, now you're up to 130. It's still pumping 135, 140, 145. That safety relief valve is set for about 20 PSI higher than what the compressor is rated for. So if it's 125, that safety relief is probably set for about 145 or 150. So when that tank gets up to about 150, because the switch didn't shut off, that valve will pop, it'll go, you'll hear all the air just rushing out, just like you were draining it. And it'll catch your attention. You look over, it's like, damn, what happened? Oh, the switch didn't shut off. It's that way so that the tank doesn't blow up. Now, you only need it there. You don't, I want you to put your auxiliary tank after the regulator, the part you adjust for your output air. Because on the output side, you can never go too high. You can never go higher than what the input is. And if you got the safety relief valve there, you don't have to worry. You can just leave it maxed out or set it for 100, 110, whatever it is, the job you're working on, this way your auxiliary tank gets that same amount of air. And this also means you don't have to screw around with your compressor. And if you doubt it's under warranty, but if it is, you don't have to worry about warranty. You don't have to worry about creating leaks. You don't have to worry about having any connectors breaking or anything. Basically, you don't have to touch your air compressor. Put the auxiliary tank after the regulator where the hose goes. And I'll show you the way I have it, because I have it going through a dryer and all that, because I believe in dry air, because I work with plasma cutters and paint guns and stuff like that, and I need the air to be super dry. But I'll show you that if you don't have an air dryer of any kind, how to do it. But I do recommend you get one, especially if you're using air tools like impact wrenches and stuff. You don't want moisture to get in and rusting and hurting your tanks, your tools. But anyway, like I said, you want it to be after the regulator. It makes no sense to put it before. There's no reason for you to open up your compressor and start taking out valves and stuff and redoing these things. So if you want some extra time on when you're using your air compressor, an auxiliary air tank is great. Another thing is, if you do care about moisture and stuff, I have mine where it's after the dryer, this auxiliary tank. So all the air that's going in there is dry air. The same air that's going out to my tools, it's all going to be dry. But in case you left air in there for 3, 4, 5 months because you weren't using it and you thought, it might have a little condensation. Well, that 5-gallon propane bottle, it's not a problem. You know, it's got the elbow on it. It's got a on and off valve and the hose for the air. It doesn't weigh anything. You flip it upside down if you feel like it. Just open up your garage, put it on the floor. It doesn't really matter. Just flip it upside down. If there is any moisture, if you look at a propane bottle, they cone and taper down to a cone to the valve. Any water will get there. Just open up the valve, that I'll show you. Blow air out that hose, and any water, moisture that was in there, it's gone too. So, and it gives you the flexibility. Like I said, by having it on the regulator side, after the regulator, it's so much simpler to just take this tank, go fill up some car tires, or take it on a job site because you just need to take a air gun maybe and shoot 10 or 20 nails or something, or who knows, blow off the deck of your deck, or dirt off your porch or something. So, like I said, that's what I recommend. I think it's the greatest thing. $5 max, $10 max maybe to get a used tank. It'll only cost you $5 or $10 for the parts, for the plumbing. Even if you got one of the $50 to $125 tanks at Lowe's or Home Depot or something, they're set up for car tires anyway. They have Schrader valves in them. They don't have a way to really hook it up to your compressor, so you're going to have to take out whatever plumbing's in there. You're still going to have to pay for that same $5 to $10 worth of plumbing to put into that. And again, that's maxed out at 125 psi tank. That's silly. Get yourself a propane tank. So let me show you what I've got going, and we'll get right back. All right, we're back again. So here's the propane tank, but just to let you know, on these, this is a good propane tank, real propane. You see the output, it's a 3-point valve and everything. So this is an old one, had a 5-point, had it sitting around the garage, took a wrench, just pulled it off, and then all I had to do was buy, an adapter here, a fitting, and then this elbow, and then a reducer down to a valve I put in. Now you can put in a bigger valve or whatever. Now I use all high flow and everything. And then like Harbor Freight or something, you can get what they call these remnant type hoses. So I put a coupler on the end and right there, and that's it. And like I said, if you want to drain it, if you happen to think that there might be some water in it, just flip it up like that. You flip it up like that, put a plug on the end of that, open up that valve I showed you, any water that was in there would come out, but mine doesn't get water because it's goes after the regulator, and it goes into the air dryer. But anyway, this is it. There's not much to it. And yeah, I wrote air on it. Not that I could confuse it. There's no way to put propane or anything else back into this. So get right back with you, and I'm going to show you how I have it all hooked up. Okay, so the first example I want to show is if you don't want to use any air dryers or anything like that, which I recommend, I'll show you that in a minute, but assuming you just had a compressor and you have your normal output. So, you know, this is a normal output, but instead of having this first, you would want to have a T so that there would be two of these on there. Okay, one going off to your hose, and the other one is going to go to this spare tank. And you want to use this and not just a regular plug, because you saw I had a coupler on the tank and that would snap right in. But if you weren't using the tank and you turn on the compressor, all that air is going to go, you know, be shooting out of there. So you just make yourself a double like this. This way, let me click this in, if it will click in. Give me a second. Okay, so now if we had that second one out here, I can have this, and then the tank can plug into there. And when I'm not using the tank, I can unplug the plug so no air shoots out of this. But that's how you would just do it normally. Now, again, I do it a little bit different. I have it going into my hose coming out of here. It's going to go up to that air dryer that you see right there. Goes into that air dryer. And they don't cost much, but they keep everything going. So this is the hose that goes back and plugs right into that compressor, into the regulator. Goes through here, and I have it into a four-way splitter. Let me get this wire out of the way for one of my drill presses. So that gold one on the right, horizontal, that's coming out of the air compressor, out of the air dryer. The one on the top, the reason I have a four-way, that blue hose, that's just going off to my workbench, so I have a second hose. The bottom one here with that red hose, that's going off to here, to my reel. So my 50-foot reel. And then the one on the left, that red plug, or the red coupler with that red hose, that's going off to my air tank. And if I turn on that air tank, turn the valve on, then that air is going to go right through. And matter of fact, I could use it right now without the air compressor. So if I wanted to fill up a tire real quick or something, I didn't want to turn on the air compressor, that's already got air in it. But then, you know, so do I have it in my main one too. But again, by having these quick disconnects, I can take that out and everything. So this is why I have it like this. But if you don't want to get as elaborate, and I don't think this is all that elaborate, I do recommend these air dryers. The one on the right is a water separator. And if any water gets in there, you turn the knob and you drain any water. Then the air goes into here. These are desiccant, like little silicone beads, and they absorb the water. They're usually like a blue, and when they turn red, that means they're full of moisture. And the reason I have the quick disconnects on both sides is so about once every 4 or 5 months, if they turn red, I can disconnect these, take this off, unscrew it, take those beads out, dry them out again, and reuse them. Because a lot of people don't know you can dry them out and reuse the beads again. But that's why I use all high flow anyway. But that's a different video. Again, having that extra 5 gallons, it's in parallel with the hose coming out. And that means that now my 20-gallon tank is now a 25-gallon tank. And, you know, depending on whatever pressure you set your regulator for, the output, that's going to also fill up that auxiliary tank. And you're going to be good to go. So that's the setup. It doesn't take much. Like I said, for $5 or $10, you get a tank. Another $5 or $10, you got some connectors, and you're done. I mean, you're done. You just put in a T connector here, either keep this and then make a tea, or take this out, you know, don't even put it. As you can see, I put a valve in there. I like to have a cutoff valve because I don't have to drain the regulator. Then I can, if I want to, I can just shut that and then pull the trigger on, say my air gun, and on the impact wrench or something, and drain all the air that's left in the hose. But again, not really relative here. If you didn't want this, that's okay. You normally have just a coupler coming out. You could just leave the coupler in there too. You don't even have to take that out. And then have a T. A T, so you could have, it'd be a plug, obviously, because if there's we'll pretend that this is back here and that there's no valve or anything. So you'd have a plug, and it'd be a T with a plug with these on the, not this on the end, but it'd be two of these. And then you'd have one going to the spare tank and one going off to your hose. It's that simple. I mean, there's nothing else to it. All right, so I hope that was informative. I hope you understand my logic behind it. The 5-gallon and the propane tank for sure, instead of spending all that extra money on a tank that can't handle anywhere near the pressure. I hope it makes sense on why I recommended being on the output of the regulator and not having to screw around with your compressor at all. And as the bonus side, I hope you maybe understand now why you should get like that air dryer with the water separator. Just for what it's worth, those two tubes, that piece, you can buy that on Amazon for like 25 bucks, okay? You can buy more expensive ones too, but it just, first one separates the water, the second one dries the air too. So, and I live in Wyoming. We don't have much humidity, so I don't get much in there. But you have to understand, no matter where you live, that air that's being compressed and put into your main tank is hot. It's warm air, and then it condensates when it hits that tank inside and gets cooler. And it all goes ahead, and that's where water builds up. And you don't want to rust out your tanks or whatever. By putting this second tank after the regulator, by the time that air comes out of the main tank, through the regulator, through the hoses, that air's already cooled down. There's nothing, it's not going to condensate again. And then it goes through the air dryers again. Then by the time it hits that spare tank, there's no moisture in there. But I hope you understand how important it is to have a moisture separator like that. So anyway, like I said, check out my channel. By the time I post this video, now I should already have the second one ready, the second video on PSIs and stuff. So look at the description of this one and see that other video. I think that's going to be pretty informative too. So I hope it all helps. Have a great day. You know, God bless, and go USA. We love y'all. Take care. Bye.